Yeah. Wow. That was quite beautiful. This is my guest, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Rosenblum. And this is my guest, ladies and just got to get my little stuff together here. That was really beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Um, yeah, it was beautiful solos, everybody, and um, um, Jasper Dutz. I know because his father and I have played together a lot.
Oh, of course. Brad's great.
Yeah, he's great. And his mom, actually, I used one of her pieces of artwork for one of my records.
Oh, fantastic. She's amazing as well.
She is amazing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Jasper is one of my closest friends. I'm playing a gig with him tomorrow. We play, regularly in the city. I play in his projects as well. And I feel like well, I feel like I'm lucky in general with the whole band that I have not only amazing musicians, but incredibly close friends and people who really care about the project.
Didn't Ben come with you to Bar Fedora?
Yeah, 5 years ago. We've been touring ever since. I don't know, I've probably logged more hours with him in the car than any other person in the world.
I remembered him because Zweig was a very good friend of mine, Barry Zweig here in LA.
Right.
Remember we talked about that, and you're probably some distant cousin or something, you know?
Exactly.
Wow, well, this is cool. Yeah, so Ben is living in New York now, which is where he's from. Did you live in LA for a while?
No, I've always lived in New York, but I've been traveling a lot, performing with my bands, and I think we've been able to come to the West Coast every year except 2020 when the shows got canceled since then. So,
Yeah, pretty nice, man. Pretty nice. And usually you take the band with you?
yeah, I've had various incarnations. I have some close friends living on the West Coast now, so sometimes I play with them. Like we were just in the Bay Area in March, and I played with a great bass player named Matt Muntz, who went to Manhattan School in New York and lived here for many years, and just started his doctorate in composition at UC Berkeley. So it was nice to catch up with him. But Ben Zweig came with me on that tour as well. I think he's made almost every tour that I've scheduled. So I'm very lucky to have such a good friend.
Totally lucky, man. It's just so nice to play with the same people for a long time. It's just such a great thing, isn't it?
It really is. And it's I like to play different music every show. With the sextet, that's a little bit harder. There's only so much music that's arranged for the sextet, but with the trio, we probably have a book of like 200 songs that we regularly play, and I try to vary it up every show. So to have people who have played with me a lot and know a lot of the music already, that's a big luxury.
That is a luxury. I want to share something which I was surprised at, but Benny Maupin lives in LA, and before the pandemic, he played about 3 or 4 times a year, and it was just delicious being in the audience hearing him. But what I found was so interesting, I was very familiar with some of his material because I had his records, and he's almost like a Schofield writer. He writes these kind of shorter heads, you know, and they're very memorable. So he would play the same songs at every gig. And but it was almost like he was saying, um, you know, here's what it is right now. Here's what it is with this band, or it was really interesting. It was just an interesting thing to observe because I'm like you. I try and change stuff, because I want to experience different things too.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's merits to both of it. I've had bass players in the band that said, we could play the same song sometimes as well. But I just find I feel like I've found a happy balance where if we have a tour of 15 shows and we play each song 3 or 4 times throughout that, then I never fall into habits of, oh, that worked so yesterday, let's do it again today. But
Yeah,
I also, get to explore the same songs in different ways. And I feel like everyone stays a little bit more focused. Nobody's on autopilot when the material is a little bit new and different every time. And it also inspires me to try to write new original material for every long tour we do.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Good idea. Well, it looks like you're friends with Taylor Hatch, and he's here.
Fantastic. Hey, Taylor, how's it going?
He has a few questions for you. One is, as a chordal player, what kinds of things have you been working on to expand your chordal vocabulary?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. You know, there's an exercise that I learned from Taylor Eichste a long time ago when I was at Stanford Jazz Camp that I always show it to my students where, I mean, Taylor's the kind of pianist that like he'll play any chord tone on any chord, even if it's a fourth or a traditionally like dissonant note from the mode. So he has this exercise where he just has you play a 4 or 5 note voicing that doesn't repeat any notes and then move it diatonically through whatever mode. And you really get a lot of interesting different sounds that you can explore. But, stemming from that, what I found ultimately is that when you spend enough time with these kind of 2/5 progressions, or if it's an original composition, whatever kinds of progressions, if you spend enough time with them, you kind of get to know the different chord tonalities, like on a major chord, like sharp 11 or a sharp 5 resolving or a diminished resolving, or a C or a major 6 versus a major 7. I feel like I've almost become friends with those sounds. And it's like when I want to see those chord, friends, then I bring them up and it leads us down a certain path. Just like when you have a conversation with a person, it's, their set of interests and what the kinds of things they like doing. And I feel like when I experiment with chords, I know certain situations in which they really like being in, and it always leads me to other insights when I throw them in those contexts. So that's one thing I would say. And the other thing I would say is that there are a few pianists that are really influential to me in terms of chordal content. The first person who comes to mind is Hank Jones. And when I listen, maybe top 10 album for me is his duo album with Abby Lincoln, When There Is Love. If
Uh-huh.
you listen to him play The Nearness of You, every A section he plays the chords slightly differently or sometimes drastically differently. But it's never in a way like sometimes substitutions are taught in a way where it's like anything goes. You can just do anything. And that's cool. But I feel like Hank's always able to navigate the changes in a way where it sounds very natural and the voice leading is really beautiful, but it's always different, whether it's a tritone substitution here or whether it's, delaying a resolution here, just very simple things that have a great impact because of the way he does it. So that's one recommendation I would say is just transcribe people whose chordal content you really like. And often it's simpler than you think for the amount of impact that it has.
I love Hank Jones too. God, he's so elegant. That's really, really great. One time I was in Japan and I was friends with Sam Most. Do you know Sam Most?
Name sounds familiar.
He was one of the fathers of jazz flute.
Okay,
I'll say
okay.
one of them, but he was like a kind of a major guy. He also
Hmm.
played sax, but his flute playing was especially great. He lived in LA and he was quite the character and he sang, he scatted. It was really funny. Anyway, so he was in Japan and I got to hang out with him and Hank Jones and Ray Brown and oh, what's his name? He was really great teacher and drummer from Boston in the old days. Um, Anyway, I can't remember. He very beautiful and solid player. But Hank Jones, man.
Yeah, no, I always said if I could accompany for singers the way he does, I would be completely satisfied. I can't say that about many qualities of playing of many people because, there's always things that I want to do my own way, but I just feel like the way he accompanies for singers and straight ahead jazz is absolutely perfect. And I've heard so many stories from people who played with him that like he would do things to throw off singers. Like when he played with Roberta Gambarini later in life, like he would just modulate without telling her and, just have her. And that's so funny to me. I mean, I wonder if singers felt like his comping was as perfect as I feel like it was. But, I
Well,
feel like that's part of the spirit of it.
I think somebody like Roberta, uh, yeah, there's a certain level of singer who has done it so much that they're totally open for a player like that to do something like that. And and it's fun and it's good because not all players will do that. I mean, there's a few issues that I have with players um, like if you're playing with a great singer and they sing a tension note, don't change your voicing to get out of the tension note.
Mm.
Because if they're a great singer, they want that tension note. And so things like that, have bothered me over the years. But I made a duo record once with Ross Tompkins, who was like a very classic Great American Songbook player. He played with Jack Sheldon a lot, and he was an accompanist dream, and he was actually like the Hank Jones thing. He would just change keys, change tempos as a duo, which is
Mm.
makes makes a duo so much fun, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because, in any other context, in an instrumental context, like with my trio, I tell them specifically, please throw things at me, change tempos, come in with a groove I wasn't expecting, like it makes my job, I have a teacher from Columbia, Chris Washburne, who always says when explaining jazz that, our mandate is to play something differently and new every time we play a standard that we've played 1,000 times. So it makes that job so much easier and more fun and more dynamic when people are open to it. And I don't think a singer should be any different in the really great sense of it. I mean, we all know our roles. We all don't want to step on each other and we all want to make each other sound the best that we can. And within that, anything goes.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I saw some solo performances of yours in the on YouTube, and I know we'll get to a bunch of stuff. Do you mind if I play one of your solo pieces?
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Because I'm curious, and maybe you can point me in the right direction, and then we will. Oh, whoa, that was somewhere again. Hold on. And we'll get to more of Taylor's questions too. But
Great.
solo piano. So maybe I'll do Round Midnight because I know that one. Is that on the lake in the morning? Is that your original?
That's an original composition, yes.
Okay. I'm a little more curious at this moment, like how you do a song I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, Ben, quite beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Wow, that was really, really nice. Whoops. Hold on one second. I lost my big screen. Okay. Yeah. Sounded so, let's see. What's the word? It's like, consistent is the wrong word, but it's like there's a there's a solid core of personality in the whole thing, even though you changed a whole bunch. But there was always you, and I think that's the sign of a really great piano player, you know. So
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I feel like solo piano more than anything. It's so exposed that when I've felt like I really succeeded in solo piano, it's always been when I felt like I could just put everything out into the world and not think about what I want, what I hope to accomplish, or what I'm supposed to be playing, or what, groove I've been working on. It's just, in the moment of performance, I feel like you just have to fully commit to being as vulnerable as possible.
such an interesting life we picked, huh?
Yes.
There's not a whole lot of things in life that happens on,
That's very true.
How does it feel listening to that?
That was a few years ago, and I have a couple of thoughts feeling listening to that. I mean, of course, I feel like every recording is a snapshot in time. So when I listen now, I'm like, oh, I would have taken it in these different directions, maybe. But as a snapshot in time, it really reminds me of a time when, first of all, that club, the Catano, is closed and hasn't opened up since the pandemic. And I used to see Frank Kimbrough, my teacher, perform there a lot. And of course, Frank passed a couple of years ago. It really brings me back into that space of having listened to Frank a lot. I hear a lot of his playing in there at that time. And yeah.
Ah, cool. Okay, let's see. Here's another Taylor question. Taylor, I don't know. Let's see. Let me think. Um, well, let's see. He has a few, one question. Did you ever give yourself exercises to broaden your sense of counterpoint when working on any tune?
Wow, that's a great question. Going back to Frank, actually, because he talked about this a lot in our lessons. He always had this exercise of just trying to take a chord tone in the middle of the voicing and move it up or down in half steps or whole steps while playing the melody and the bass notes. And, it really forces you to really think about the harmony and lots of different ways to go through it, because sometimes those chromatic notes really clash with the chord. It's like, how can I change this chord tone into something that's going to work with this? And those chromatic lines then eventually become melodies. But I think, of course, the master of counterpoint is, Bach and all those Baroque guys. I have the book of Bach chorales on my piano. And I also listen a lot in terms of counterpoint to modern gospel music. And in jazz, I think the person who does it, my favorite, is Fred Hirsch. And I actually downloaded his class during the pandemic. He has a class on open studios that he talks a lot about solo piano playing, and some of what he talks about is involved with counterpoint. So if you're curious about that, I would highly recommend him. But recently, actually, instead of melodic counterpoint, I've been really trying to focus on rhythmic counterpoint and just trying to feel polyrhythms, and even in 4/4 straight ahead, putting the metronome on beat and of two every bar, or or more simple, like and or beat 4 or beat 2, but really trying to feel the time strongly with the metronome there. It's like just having that internal fundamental foundation. I feel like that's what I'm always trying to tell my students. Once you have the fundamentals, then all of the things that you want to say are grounded in that. But fundamentals are more than just, okay, I can usually play in time and I usually know how to navigate the chord changes. It's like really virtuosic fundamentals, or like, I can hold the time consistent and make it easy for someone else who usually doesn't play time well to follow me and lock right in. That's the sign of virtuosic fundamentals that just lift the whole thing up. So I've been trying to work on that a little bit more, especially in the context of various world musics that use different odd meters. I've been playing a lot of some Balkan music. I've been playing a lot of Brazilian music and South American music. During the pandemic, I was working on this Venezuelan 5/8 merengue. That was so hard. But, really those kinds of experiences playing with people who that's the native music, they play it with ease, like we play 4/4. It really is very humbling. And, every experience like that strengthens those fundamental senses of time and feel. And
I know you play accordion, so I would imagine the accordion comes into that very strongly, right?
oh, absolutely. I would say when I first met you, I was probably playing 90% piano. And in the intervening years, I'm about half at this point, accordion and piano. It's really taken over my life in an interesting way. But I play a lot of Brazilian music, and I play some Balkan music. I play with an Indian modern ghazal singer, and with some trad jazz groups and French musette. And there's so many styles of music where the accordion is native to it.
Yeah.
And then trying to bring that back to the jazz world and play some straight ahead jazz on the accordion is also really fun. But I would say with the accordion, because the piano is a percussive instrument, it's easy to have the attack come in where you want it to come in, roughly speaking. The accordion, it's more like a wind instrument or a reed instrument. So the rhythmic thing it's also really made me understand like how to place things rhythmically when the attack isn't as clear. How to be
Yeah.
percussive in that setting is a lot harder. And on the other hand, there are things on the accordion, since it's a vocal instrument, that you can't do on the piano, like vibrato and crescendoing through a note, all the things you can do on a
Yeah.
wind instrument or as a vocalist. So that's been cool too. It's kind of affected my piano playing. It's like, how can I imitate that kind of effect on the piano that I can get on the accordion? I
Yeah.
think it's always useful to play multiple instruments because you get new perspectives on the bandstand. And also, I feel like as an accordionist, I play with other pianists and I can get a sense of what I like when other people play with me. And then when I go back to the piano, it really affects the way I approach accompanying for them.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some, oh gosh, I have to go looking, and you may know them. There's there's a duo that used to record together. I don't know, maybe 20 years ago. It was an Italian, at least one of them was Italian, uh, really incredible accordionist, and I think he was a clarinetist. Does that ring a bell at all? Or you,
The Italian accordion player that I would be thinking of was Simone Zanchini.
oh,
He's an amazing straight ahead player. He has a duo album with another accordionist, Frank Morocco,
yeah,
who is my vote for the most swinging accordion player in straight ahead jazz. But I don't know exactly. I mean, probably the most famous accordionist in the jazz tradition is Richard Galliano,
oh,
and he's from France. He does a lot of French musette stuff as well, but he really plays straight ahead jazz beautifully as well. And he has a couple albums of accordion bass drums trio, which is pretty unusual.
yeah.
With some really great people.
I have to go looking for that. It was a long time ago when I heard it, and it was really mind blowing. And the clarinetist was great too. But anyway, I'll have to look for that. Um,
I would say I play a lot with Jasper on, clarinet or bass clarinet, and I'm playing accordion, and the blend between accordion and clarinet is beautiful. They're both kind of deep, mellow reed instruments. It's just,
wow,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
His sound is great.
it's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, man. He's just, I mean, when I hear his sound, I just think, yep, his whole upbringing, man, was just surrounded by really artistic music and, you know, his mom and dad are both like so good. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, and the other person too, I don't know if you ever played with him or you know him, is he's a friend of Jasper's, Wayne Pete's son. He's a drummer.
Oh, I don't think I know him.
Peet. Let me just look and see if I actually have his number or his name in here. Pete Ellington.
Okay. I don't know
Yeah.
him, sadly.
Ask Jasper about him. He's another guy who came up, and also they just happen to have Japanese mom and
Mm,
American dad, and his dad is a pianist and a sound engineer, and he's into more kind of leaning towards avant-garde stuff as
nice.
well. And Ellington is really good. He's a really good drummer. Yeah, he's probably the same age as you guys too.
Okay, I'll definitely look out. I have a lot of friends around our age from LA. I don't know how it happened, but somehow like on not the most recent album, but the album before with the sextet, Jake Chapman plays a couple songs with us. He was my roommate in college, amazing vibraphone player, and this pianist Jeremy Corin also played on that album a
I
little
know his name.
bit. Yeah, he's amazing. When we did the CD release for the most recent album, he came and sat in at Smalls as well. That was really
Oh,
fun.
cool, very
Yeah,
cool.
you know,
You have a new record too coming out, right?
well, it just came out February. This album, A Thousand Pebbles. It's with the sextet as well, the Nebula Project. I've been trying to do more touring with the larger ensemble. Of course, it's difficult with the logistics of 6 people, but I'm starting to get more stuff on the calendar. And I've always felt like when I'm composing, like the trio, I feel like I want to leave more stuff open for interpretation and for things to go in many different directions. I feel like piano trio or accordion trio, it's like it's at its best when it's really dynamic and unpredictable. But as a composer, when I want to really write things that are more through composed, I always hear for the a larger ensemble, the sextet. Big band's a little bit overwhelming for me, but just having the multiple textures where I can have horns playing together, different lead instruments, I can break things down to the trio or the rhythm section. It gives me a lot more flexibility to create narrative, which I think is ultimately what I'm trying to do. So
Yeah, I like that. We'll definitely listen to some of that. Um, let's see. Oh, Taylor would like to know your thoughts about comping on a gig when there's a guitar involved. Like, what's your take on how to balance between the chordal instruments?
yeah, I mean, this is something I think about a lot because there's a guitarist in my group, and I've I've kind of come to this as a composer when I have complete creative control over it. I've come to this kind of resolution with the piano and guitar that some things just sound really beautiful comping on guitar and some things sound really beautiful on the piano. Anything that I want something that's a little more like strummy or regular pattern. I feel like the guitar has such an advantage with that. And things that I want to be a little more sparse, colorsy. The guitar can do that beautifully too, but I just, I always hear the piano on that. And because of that, I feel like I have a guitarist in my group, Rafael Rosa, who is amazing at just being incredibly supportive and listening a lot. And when I think the piano and guitar are working well, it's because they're taking on different roles. So I play a lot of music where regular comping patterns are useful for keeping things together. Brazilian music, Afro-Cuban music, or various folklore traditions. And if one person holds that down, on a 7/8, tack, 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 then the other person can play long, the other person can play
Yeah,
counter melodies,
yeah,
they're taking on different aspects of accompanying. On a straight ahead gig playing standards with the guitar and piano,
yeah,
I always just feel like you don't want multiple people trying to play irregular rhythmic patterns.
yeah.
So I don't think that there's any shame in trading off one person comping and then the other person comping, but I think that that often becomes a crutch when there's a piano and guitar playing together. It becomes an easy way to just not have to listen as hard. And I feel like, if there's a guitar playing kind of stereotypical irregular comping swing patterns, I'll try to play little Count Basie-esque fills, or I'll try to play longer chords, or I'll try to play, guide tones the way a horn player might. I always feel like there's some avenue for finding something that's not going to interfere with the soloist or the singer, and also not going to interfere with whoever's taking the primary comping role.
But it will add.
Yeah, because there's so many recordings where there's a full string orchestra or a big band accompanying a soloist. It's like there's no reason why two people can't find things to do if you can have 20 people accompanying and it sounds all right. You
Yeah,
just need to be a little bit thoughtful and a little creative and have a bag of comping tools. I feel like some people approach comping with a one size fits all. It's just like, this is how to comp. Whether that's always playing a quarter note with the guitar, or whether it's playing more hard bop style comping, or whether it's playing more strummy patterns, or, it's like, I feel like every song I do, even if I play a full set of only straight ahead swing, I want to try to create an energy that's consistent and unique to that song, because that's going to be more fun for me and it's going to be more fun for the listener as well.
yeah,
We're going to create something that feels different. There's nothing I hate more than when I go to a show of really great musicians and they play basically the same song for an hour. They play different songs, but they're all the same tempo and the same rhythm, same groove. And, everybody takes a solo and then they trade with the drums. It's just, it infuriates me because it's like, I know that you all can be making better music that will be more interesting for you and more interesting for us as well. So, yeah, I always
I
try to
agree.
find,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree with that. As a matter of fact, my husband is not a huge jazz fan for that reason, because when I first met him, he would constantly say that. Why does everybody take a solo? And I mean, and it's interesting because I've brought him to see people like Mark Ferber, and he loves it. So it's not that he doesn't like jazz, it's what he's heard and the concept of that very limited structure. I think that's,
Yeah.
but when in your speaking, you made me think of Larry Kuntz, who has a very distinctive comping style. It's not, dun, dun, dun. He's always, he's got a very unusual rhythmic approach. And I'm just kind of contemplating how he does. I mean, I've heard him in lots of different situations, and he's always supportive of the music in general, and which is why he's such a desired player. But his comping is he's got a really distinctive comping. You know, it's not
Yeah,
on
I just
it's
feel
not on one, 2, 3, 4. It's not on that.
Yeah, I just feel like as a trio band leader, I continue always to be challenged at this. It's like when we play a standard, how many different kinds of options can we find? Can we start with a drum solo or a bass solo? Can we trade an irregular number of bars? Can the piano and bass trade? Can the piano and bass play solo at the same time? Can we have the bass walking and then the piano and drums trade, but not set numbers of bars, but just phrases back and forth, And we're always trying to find different textures for improvisation because it's just when you listen to the great hard bop recordings, they're always doing things like that. I feel like people think of certain eras of jazz that are very influential on straight ahead jazz today as being very samey, but if you really go back and listen through them, they're always trying new things, and I just get so much inspiration just hearing, Horace Silver doing a 5/4 tune, because it's clearly not his comfort zone, but it sounds great because he's finding his way of doing it.
Yeah.
Or, when I hear, on those Max Roach, Clifford Brown Max Roach, where they trade, one beat each and they do it in a way that's incredible. It's just like, I can't do that. I don't think anybody, who hasn't really spent time shedding that can do that. And I think it's the same with comping. It's like when I hear Hank Jones comp, who I already said is my hero, it's so different from when I hear Chick Corea comp, but that's also amazing. Chick Corea is always just playing, instigating melodic and rhythmic phrases that are pushing. And, when he plays a phrase, it locks the rhythm in immediately. And it's like, what are you going to do about that? It's like, playing at the singer, at the soloist, and it's great. It speaks to a different kind of texture that I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. I can see why you're a teacher. The way that you speak about all this is very clear and friendly. It's understandable, and also you're very inspirational in how you're speaking. And actually, Taylor had a question. He wanted to know what are your thoughts about the direction of jazz education. I
Oh,
just want to bring that question up.
that's such a great question. I have so many thoughts, and I talk about this all the time. My thoughts are always evolving, especially because, when I go on tour with my bands, often I do master classes and I work with people who are college age, who are pretty serious musicians. And the landscape of learning jazz is even different than when I was growing up, even though it's only about 5 or 10 years removed from when I was their age.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like a lot more people are learning from YouTube tutorials. A lot more people are getting recommendations from Spotify algorithm. A lot more people are following influential jazz influencers on Instagram, and getting their opinions about what jazz is through these means that it's very hard to sift through the good and bad information, just like it's hard to sift through the good and bad information when you have a teacher at a college. I mean, I don't think it's any better or worse necessarily, but I think that there are different pitfalls. And, what I always think is best as a teacher is to find the avenues that are most interesting to you, and then find the people who are doing it at the highest level in your opinion, and then just try to talk to them directly. Because I feel like, even if they're not experienced teachers, they'll give you listening recommendations, they'll recommend people to go talk to, they'll recommend shows to go to, and it doesn't really matter whether your interest is straight ahead jazz or it's world music. Or recently, I know a lot of young musicians are learning about jazz through video game music, and I play a lot of video game music concerts, and I meet young jazz musicians who come to jam sessions and we improvise over Mario or Zelda or Pokemon. It's great, but it's just, you just need to, and I have a whole other spiel about that, because there's standards that they grew up with, just like in the hard bop era, the standards of the day were musical theater songs, and that's why we play those standards. But it's just to say that at a young age, people are so impressionable. And I do think that sometimes some of these influences give people a really wrong idea of what they should be doing or what they have to do or what a real jazz musician is. And I just feel like there are so many ways to have a career in music. I'm just going to say improvised music as a broad term, because
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be jazz. I feel like jazz has given learning straight ahead jazz has given me a lens into being able to interpret and interact with music from all different parts of the world. But in my professional career, I probably do only about half straight ahead jazz, and the other half is widely varied. If that, some months I play more Brazilian music or more video game music or more world music. It just depends who I'm on tour with and who I'm playing with. So jazz education, I would just say try to get as many different perspectives as possible. And when at all possible, if you can talk to somebody who you feel inspired by in person or online directly and get recommendations from them, that's going to be your best source of information. The way for me growing up playing with Curtis Lundy or Winard Harper, instantly brought my playing up
Yeah.
because they just immediately told me what I needed to do and what wasn't working. And, it that's the most valuable thing, is just this music and so many other music traditions are passed down generation to generation. So as much as you can be learning from people who have more experience, who have done all of this and who have been in your shoes, I think that's way more valuable than learning lines from a jazz improvisation course or following a jazz influencer and taking 5 tips for soloing on bebop. Seems to be the trend.
As far as compositions, I mean, could there be almost any better composing than Brazilian? I don't think.
Oh, I mean, incredible. Speaking of vulnerability, I mean, like on my last record, the one composition that I arranged and that wasn't original was Song of the Sabias, Jobim tune, that Chico Buarque wrote lyrics to. And it's just like when you translate these lyrics that Chico wrote, and I mean, it's the sabia being kind of the national bird of Brazil anyways, and Chico writing these lyrics of nostalgia, during the dictatorship when he was exiled, saying, I'll go back, I'll go back and pick a rose that doesn't grow, it's just like that longing for something that doesn't exist. The last line, I did everything and nothing to forget you. I just when you hear that, how can you not be moved to play? It's just I feel like the inspiration I get from Brazilian music, musically and lyrically, it moves me in such a profound way.
Yeah. Are you speaking Portuguese?
I was learning for a while, and then I married my wife who's Japanese and started learning Japanese, and all my Portuguese just immediately dumped out the side of my brain, and there's only room but eventually I want to go back to it. I can still read with some difficulty and translate through, and when I was learning Portuguese, I was doing a lot of translating song lyrics because there's so many beautifully poetic lyrics, especially from that military dictatorship era, Aldir Blanc and Chico Buarque and João Bosco, writing in metaphor to get around censorship, just trying to find a way to express their discontent with, what was going on. It's, just so poignant.
Yeah, it's so poignant. And I always say that within one song, which is something you just quoted, it's the height of love and the depths of love within one
Oh,
song stated, and like I sang Velho Piano, Old Piano.
mm.
So it talks about how this love is just exquisite and bigger and better than anything, and then it becomes like an old piano sitting in the corner never being played. in the same song. You know, it's
Oh,
oh my God.
I mean, incredible. There's a song like that that Chico wrote, Trocando en Miúdos, which is like, considering the leftover pieces of the relationship at the end of the relationship, and it's just like you read through it and it's so real. There's an English equivalent. There's a song that Shirley Horn sings of Johnny Mercer called "Where Do You Start?" I
Yeah,
get the
that's a
very
great
very
song.
similar. Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for those heartbreak songs. I don't know. I just feel like
Oh, where do you start though? That's like actually I I had an audition for the composers for this show in LA, and the lyricists Alan and Marilyn Bergman, who couldn't write a bad song if they tried. And they were there, and they wanted a song that you felt really, you know, attached to. I had to pick that song because, and I thought, I'm going to cry in the song, you know, and I did. And they were okay with that because they knew that spot. It was like, oh, yeah, we know that spot is like, you know, and
yeah.
it's such a really, really beautiful song. And it was so well written for the movie that it was in. It was a Goldie Hawn and what's his name? I forget his name, but anyway, it was probably the only movie they ever did together, and it was about they had a relationship, then they decided to get married after living together for years, and then they were going to break up, and they were forced to stay in this room together because they were writers.
Oh,
And the music was playing in the background. Patty Austin was singing, and it was like, oh my God, it was really very
yeah.
powerful.
Oh, I
Um,
need to watch that.
yeah. Do you know Herbie Hancock played a Japanese song Ringo Oiwake, which is really beautiful.
Oh, okay.
I'll send you my version of it because I recorded it, but it's really a beautiful song. And I first heard it because when I was in Japan, my Japanese band introduced me to this version. And it's just really, it's a very beautiful song. It was originally like a big pop song back in the 70s, maybe, you know, by
Mm.
this famous singer. And very different. But then somehow Herbie picked that song, you know, it was really beautiful.
I need to listen to that. That sounds amazing.
It's really, really pretty song. Yeah, I'll send you at least my copy, and then you can hunt out Herbie's version too. You know.
Amazing.
Okay, what's this question, Taylor? Not sure if you think about this a lot, but in what ways have you found humility in yourself, the way that you play and convey what voice you want to project? Wow,
Wow,
nice
that's
question.
a yeah, that's a really deep question. I
Very.
mean, my simple answer is that I feel like living in New York, where pretty much all of the best musicians in the world pass through, or a lot of them live, it's like it's very difficult not to be humble. I get my butt kicked on a daily basis. Anytime I go see a concert or play with an elder of jazz or world music. But for me, I would say in general, I mean, the 21st century really encourages you to always be putting yourself in that position of you should pay attention to me, you should look at me, you should look at what I'm doing, which is something that I've always had a lot of difficulty with in general. I've always just been of this mentality of, oh, like they're interested in what I do. That's so cool. Why is that? Oh, thank you. I never really have figured out how to, you know, come to own it. But what I've found as a kind of way of navigating that is just trying to share what I want to say and thinking less about putting my music out there and more about just like what's if somebody is going to pay attention to me, like what do that intention is so valuable.
Yeah.
It's so precious. I want to say something valuable once they're paying attention, because I just don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
So that's as much as I can say about that, I think. But what I said earlier about every recording being a snapshot in time, I think that sometimes people, I think there are lots of struggles with confidence, overconfidence or underconfidence, as an artist. I saw a graphic once. Being an artist is the intersection of absolute narcissism and crippling self-doubt. And I felt I understand the sentiment, but I think that just
Funny. So
just
true. It's so true, man. I fight with that all the time with my students, so, especially singers. I think because we're standing up in front of people, we have to convey the emotion through the lyrics. We have to be honest. We have to, be professional and handle all the things. But
exactly.
it's hard. I always say it's a head trip, and I see the student beating themselves up, even just on technique. It's like, hey man,
Yeah.
you're beating yourself up. I see it. I don't know why. I can't tell you because that's in your own head and your own upbringing and all that stuff. But you have to work on that. It's you have to
Yeah.
practice. You have to practice this fluidity and letting go because whatever you work on gets better. So if you work on bad shit, that gets better too.
That's such a great way to express it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just feel like you always have to remember that every moment is a temporary moment in your development, and there are going to be some great things from a beginner that are just coming out of a place of naivete. Carla Bley always said, once you lose your innocence, you can't get it back, and then there are going to be some great things that come out of learning and, advancing your technique. And there are going to be great things that come out of imitating other people and great things that come out of taking risks and sounding bad sometimes.
Yeah.
And if you just think of every moment as a snapshot in time and just think about what do I want to say right now,
Yeah.
I think it takes the attention less away, attention away from am I good enough or am I doing what I set out to accomplish, and it puts more of the intention on just the process, the journey of where am I at right now, what's the next step that I'm trying to take.
I know what you mean, like especially the older I get, um it's not that I was self-conscious before a lot, but there's a different consciousness that's happening. And when I go do a gig, I find myself like kind of preparing like um that I'm happy about sharing with the audience. And then that does, come out in the performance, both musically and, just personally, right?
Yeah.
And I like that. I really like that. I like the feeling that I get to from that. And I feel like I give people something, and I feel like I'm giving the musicians my best as well when I do that too. It's good. It's a good thing to practice doing, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard, but
It is. It's hard. So true. Hey, okay, so let's go look for, you mentioned some song that sounded really cool on the your new record or
oh, I mean, I would love to play something from the new record. If you search Ben Rosenblum, A Thousand Pebbles, you should find the playlist with the new album. It won't be a video, but yeah, I guess we haven't played anything with the accordion yet, so maybe if you want to go to, let's see, if you can find Bulgaris somewhere in here.
yeah, right here.
Yeah, or you can go to the Song of the Sabia, which is the Shikobarki one that I was just talking about.
Okay, we have time for both, so. Cool, very cool. I like how you're playing the accordion too, man.
Thanks so much. I wanted to record something in the Faja style. That song's originally a bossa nova orchestral brooding piece, but over the pandemic, I was playing a lot of Faja music. It's like a northeastern Brazilian dance music rooted in baião rhythms, and I during the pandemic, it was one of my only gigs during the days when we could only play outdoors, and all the Brazilian Faja dancers would come every week through the winter under the heat lamps. It was snowing outside. We were playing under the covering, and they would come, and it
Oh
really,
my God.
yeah, it was quite an experience and quite a sense of community that was built up around that. I think the music will always be really close to my heart because of that. So,
Yeah. The name of this piece is, what was it?
Song of the Sabia.
Song of the Sabia.
Probably most famous in America for being on the Sinatra and Jobim album, and there's some
Ah,
English lyrics that are also pretty beautiful to that. Jobim has his own version, and then there's multiple versions by other musicians.
yes. Yes. My friend Joyce, made a comment on what we were talking about. I find myself hesitant to put myself out there, overly concerned about being my authentic self. She's an artist as well.
Mm.
I think I have a big inner critic who's always fretting about how I come across and does not allow me to try and to fail or succeed. It keeps holding me back until it thinks I will be best. And in my utmost authenticity, it freezes me from experimentation and throwing caution to the wind, come what may, which is the best path for the greatest growth. Absolutely. That's what we try for all the time, you know? Well, I mean, some of
Yeah.
us, I guess. I realized a long time ago that if I was singing the song exactly how it was written, I was not my best self. I mean, I could sing it. It was okay, but nobody was going to be impressed with that anyway, you know?
Yeah. No,
So,
I understand what you're saying, and I think that, like, I grew up with a lot of very important mentors, and some of them were very encouraging to be myself, and some of them were very strict about this is what jazz needs, this is what jazz should sound like. And I think when I was starting to perform with my own band at first, I always had this inner voice that was like, well, if you really want to stay true to these people who believed in you, you should have this, you should do this. And, you know, I feel like over time that just became so exhausting to try to be try to be achieving the standards of an imagined third party that was never satisfied. And I think that my own standards are harsh enough, and I felt at a certain point, well, when I'm with my band, I just need to do whatever I want to do on that night. And if that's all straight ahead jazz, and if there's not a single straight ahead jazz song in there, it's not a problem. We can do what feels right. And I can try to trust that I've put in the hours to be able to play these styles because I've worked with so many different people and I've done so much exploration on my own. And at the end of the day, when I feel doubt, I always try to just dig back into the preparation that I've put in. I think that's always the thing that grounds me, is just knowing that I have put in the time to really try to explore myself within the context of all these different styles, and then also in my own original music. And when I play those styles, it's like if it ends up going in a different direction, then I can rely on the preparation I've put in those. It seems like an oxymoron, the preparation for improvisation, the preparation for the unknown, preparation for being in a situation you've never been in before. But that's kind of the beauty of jazz, not only in my mindset of on the bandstand, but off as well. I feel like becoming a jazz musician is about learning how to have a different approach to failure, different approach to different mindset on what it means to succeed. It's like at the end of the day, if the audience didn't like what I did, but I felt like it was successful, then it was successful. And if the audience loved it, but I didn't feel good about it, then it wasn't successful. And at the end of the day, I have to go rely back on that as my rubric for how I go about approaching my career.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Um, I'm curious how much time, I mean, I'm not asking for very specific time, but how much time overall have you put into tone? You know,
Oh, wow. Well, my teacher Frank gave me the best advice that I've ever received with regards to the sound of the instrument, which is that, should try to imagine what the most perfect sound would be like and then adjust your touch until you get there. You know, it seems like such a simple advice, and yet I mean, it's obviously way easier said than done, but I really think that if you have a clear imagination of what you want it to sound like, and then you're really listening to what's coming out of the instrument, if it's not sounding like that, then you get the immediate feedback of that. If you're not sure what it's supposed to sound like, then you'll never know if you're doing it right or not. So obviously there are people that I really love their touch. People like, on the one end, Fred Hirsch, Keith Jarrett, Bill Evans. On the other hand, people like Bobby Timmons, Wynton Kelly, Duke Ellington, or on another end, Gonzalo Rubalcaba or Egberto Gismonchis. Like,
people really
they're,
have very distinct sounds, right? What's his, oh,
yeah.
Joey Calderazzo. I love
Oh,
his sound. He's got a really unique sound, right?
so distinct, yeah. And you would think that people who are playing on different pianos all the time, like, it would be difficult for them to have their sound every time. And yet when you listen to a Bill Evans recording, when you listen to a Monk recording, when you listen to Keith Jarrett, you can always tell immediately, just by their touch. It's
Yeah.
like no matter what piano they're playing on it. And that's as much inspiration for me. I've had plenty of very humbling experiences of, being on gigs where I'm playing a bad piano that I really don't like, and I'm like, oh, I can't get my sound because it's a bad piano. And then, I don't know, Orrin Evans sits in and he just immediately sounds like Orrin Evans. I'm like, how did he do that on
Yeah.
this terrible out of tune piano? But, it's like,
That's so
it's real.
true.
I've had enough humbling experiences like that to let me know that, you know, you're always in dialogue with the instrument. You're always only able to get what you need out of the instrument if you're also listening to what the instrument is providing. But at the end of the day, if you imagine what you want it to sound like, you can always get the instrument to be in line with that imagination. How much have I worked on it? I think other people probably have worked on it more than I have. But what I'll say is that I started taking classical lessons again recently, and I've been thinking a lot about touch in the context of those classical lessons because, there are a lot of technical things about arm weight and body weight and movement that I think I never really dug into, that now it's like I feel like with the technique I was using, I could get those sounds, but it's just so much easier to get certain sounds out using other technique in conjunction with the technique I was using. So Fred Hirsch talks a lot about this as well in his class. So, it's I've been thinking a lot more about it recently, and especially in the context of melodic phrasing. How on the piano, how can you make a melody sound like one breath or multiple breaths, and an instrument where you don't have to breathe? That also is something from playing the accordion that's made me think a lot, because the accordion, you change directions. There is some natural breath involved with the instrument. But at the end of the day, I think Max Roach talked about how as a pianist or drummer, if you don't take breaths, you sound like a machine or a robot. You don't you don't sound like a human. So it's like instilling that sense of a breath in the playing is so important. And I think the touch really has a lot to do with that.
Yeah. The voice technique is something that's fascinating to me. I've taught voice for a long time, and I had a really good teacher when I moved here. I had a great teacher for a number of years. I used to go watch her lessons, and she had a method that she had gotten from an Italian master, Cesare, and that worked for me for a long time in both my singing and my teaching. Then something shifted, whatever it was. Then I like not too long ago, maybe I don't know, by now it was probably 7, 8 years ago. I started not enjoying the
Mm.
production of my voice. Then I started. I looked for new teachers, and I'm still kind of shifting through teachers. But one thing, I found this book that was each chapter was a famous classical singer and their way of practicing and their understanding of technique. Everyone was different. And that kind of blew my mind a little, because of course, as a teacher, I mean, I've heard enough students and, you know, talk about what their teachers said to them and, that either I agree with or I would never say in a million years. But, um, but it just made me realize that, of course, there are certain, like you just said, basically, there's certain things in technique that are helpful to know and could work for you, and then there's other things that maybe that's not your best use. Maybe you need something a little slightly different for your instrument. But it's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
Oh, it's so fascinating. And it's kind of like, your taste changes over the years and also your sense of priority on, what you really want to focus on bringing out but also it's like, I know that I play piano with a heavier touch in general. And it's just like, you know, for a long time the real goal was trying to learn how to be light and graceful on the piano, and I think that I've spent a lot of time in that and I've been able to accomplish something. But then there's this other goal that's like, okay, well, within a heavy touch, how can I make a heavy touch sound graceful? And it's like, it's because it's like people are just different, and I feel like certain things are part of a musical personality. And when I listen to people like Bill Evans, it's like I think a lot of people would say that Bill Evans has a beautiful touch, but it's pretty heavy. Honestly, it's pretty loud on the piano, and I feel like he's just able to navigate that in such a graceful way that it feels effortless. You know, so I really feel like there's a way to expand your palette to be able to develop new tools. And then there's also a way to hone your existing tools to have the biggest impact and effect.
Yeah. Yeah, very cool. My friend Roland made you 0.0009 cents richer.
Oh, really? Oh, thank you.
He bought one of your.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Roland. He always says, these shows are bleeding him, but 0.0009 is pretty, well, he's not paying that. We're getting that, but that's a whole different thing. What do you think of of CDs and the way business is going, like how to make money as a musician?
I'd be lying if I said I was the greatest entrepreneur. I mean, I've definitely had to learn how, I feel like I have to wear multiple hats like every musician does. I've learned how to book a tour. I've learned how to organize a tour and rent a car and book hotels. And I've learned how to make a poster and use Photoshop. And feel like they just you just learn things. I've learned how to reach out to media and promote. It's like you wear many hats. Obviously there's many generations ahead of me that made more of a living off of royalties and CD sales. And I think I grew up in a generation where it was already recognized that that wasn't the business model of how you make money. I feel like some of my teachers or people that I encountered in the older generation growing up were the first generation where they really saw their income cut into, where their teachers had made successful income. And there's a bitterness in that I always wanted to try to avoid. And what I see more is young musicians accepting that that's not a business model. I mean, I do sell CDs on my tour. There are lots of people who are very nice and support the music. There are people who buy digitally. But I see a lot of young musicians finding other methods to making a living and being very creative. A lot of them do streaming. I have a very close saxophone playing friend named Patrick Bartley, who I would say makes the majority of his living off of YouTube videos and Twitch streams, and is very successful with that, and has learned how to create a very engaging environment that goes beyond just the playing. I mean, he's one of the most virtuosic sax players I know, but also he's very insightful, and he knows how to interact well, and he knows how to be part of that culture and have a specific niche.
Yeah.
And so that's one avenue. I know people who have gotten really good at understanding Spotify's algorithms, learning how to get playlist placement and making actually pretty decent passive income from getting their songs placed on very popular playlists. That's another avenue. I've seen people who just make a full living off of touring, and really they concentrate on selling their music and their merchandise and live shows. I feel like traditionally that's been more of a rock band kind of model, but in jazz it can work out that way as well. And I just I think that there's always going to be a way for musicians to make a living doing creative things. I always just say to my students that there's going to be a sacrifice somewhere, whether that sacrifice is spending a lot of late nights hanging out at clubs with older musicians and getting hired and, networking that way, whether that sacrifice is spending a couple hours every day on the computer sending emails to venues, or whether that sacrifice is spending a few hours every day working on social media videos, YouTube videos, TikTok, whatever, to make your passive income that way. There's always going to be some amount of sacrifice, and there are increasingly fewer people who are willing to be booking partners or, promoters or agents until you've basically proven that you can do it completely by yourself, for like 15 years. And then they're like, oh, we'll do it for you now, So I feel like
Weird.
it is weird. But I feel like it's just like, for me, I'm not the personality that can do the social media thing, and I'm not the personality that can spend late hours at the club, but I am the personality that can spend hours on the computer every day and learn how to organize touring. So that's the sacrifice that I made.
Yeah. That's a lot of work, man. I used to do that before I was married to my second husband. Those were different days. We didn't really, the internet was there, but it was not half as active. I mean, I would send out snail mail to Europe, for a PR pack, and I would call on the phone, with, money spent. And I would set it up like I'd get a gig somewhere with a workshop, and then from there I'd build out. And that was cool, but I haven't done that really in recent years. I get again, your life changes, you're married, whatever, your family, and then you're teaching or you're not teaching or you're running a club, or things happen. But it is really nice to go on tour, isn't it? It's nice to get out of kind of the usual things where you are and realized that there's a lot of appreciation out there and a lot of really unique and wonderful experiences. Like for me, Japan actually, I've been there, I don't know, 50 times or something, you know. I really had a long time going there and touring, and it was beautiful. It was always a really nice experience to go to Japan, you know.
Oh, I obviously I fell in love with Japanese culture, especially I since my wife is Japanese, I've been over there multiple times, meeting her family, and I've done some touring as well. And every day I'm speaking Japanese and consuming Japanese media, so I really, really fell in love with that. And it's the beautiful thing about traveling is you get exposed to so many new inspirations, meet so many great people. And also I feel like I learned how to value myself a little bit higher by touring because I do a lot more performances for people who come to see me and are listening. And gradually I've learned how to do a little bit better at getting people to show up to the shows, and just going and playing, a week of shows for, good full rooms with my band where people are coming to listen to me. It's like, I feel like I put up with a little bit less heartache in New York when people are like, oh, do you want to play for little money at a brunch gig where they tell you to play softer? I'm like, no, I don't need to do that actually, I just, I don't have to do that, and that's not a good use of my time. And I feel like, you know, just understanding, because in New York it's all the venues have their pick of whoever they want basically, and it's easy to feel like, oh well, at my level this is what I have to do. But leaving New York, there are so many opportunities to play, and people are so appreciative, and they really respond to the music, and not music that you've curated for them that you think they'll like, but my music and the music that I love and the music that I want to share. And they bring their own stories to that from their own perspectives. And I'm lucky. I've toured all through the US over the past 6 years. I've toured in Canada and Europe and Japan, and finding audiences that are so appreciative and so receptive to what I want to be doing every day anyways is that's also really humbling. And but it's a great feeling of just understanding that this music has value,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so, uh, so what are you doing presently? What are you working on?
Well, many things, I guess. I just released this sextet album. This is the second sextet album, and we just got written up in Downbeat Magazine in the upcoming issue. There's a little article about the album and about my touring and accordion, and that was really cool. But I'm basically just trying to keep up the momentum of this group because it's the group I feel the most passionate about composing for. So this month, the first 3 months of the year, I think I was touring 6 weeks out of that with my group. So it's been really crazy. This month I've had more time, a few days off where I really got to sit down and just compose with nothing else scheduled, and that's been really rewarding as well. And I have maybe a half an album's worth of ideas for the next sextet album. I have a solo piano album that's all recorded. It just needs to be mixed and mastered, and I'll probably release that sometime next year in some capacity. And I'm playing with a lot of great groups. I started working with a young singer named Laura Anglade, who she's just nominated for Juno. She's based in Canada. Great straight ahead jazz singer, and also she's French originally, so she does a lot of beautiful Michel Legrand and French,
Tell me
chanson.
her name again.
Laura
Laura
Anglade.
Anglade, like, uh,
Anglade.
okay.
we played at the Rochester Jazz Festival last summer, and I just thought of her because we're doing some touring next month with her, and I'm also booking things in the fall with her, so doing more with her. I have some stuff coming up with this Indian singer who's also originally from Canada, Juno winning. Her name's Kiran Alawalia, and her husband, Rez Abbasi, amazing jazz guitarist. So that's been a really cool group. There were a lot of really cool opportunities that I had that came up during the pandemic. I feel like some of the things I had been doing kind of fell away and other things started coming up. I've been playing with this dance company recently. That's been really fun. Just it's all Ernesto Nazareth, like old Shoro music, but the dancing is all contemporary club dancing, hip hop, and that's really cool. There are just so many great things going on, and then I'm planning tours with my band. So I have something with the sextet in the Midwest in July, and then I am planning some stuff with the sextet in Florida in February, and the West Coast in March and April. I'm starting to get on top of that now. So
Oh, cool.
you know, I I always keep my website updated, benrosenblummusic.com. I find it a nice way to procrastinate by updating my website. I don't know why I feel like, but it just seems like I feel like I like organization, and just seeing everything in one place makes me very happy. So,
I'm gonna look at
yeah,
that.
yeah, absolutely.
That's funny. That's a funny. I've never heard anyone say that before.
It just somehow it makes me feel like I have a grip on, oh, I think that's an
That's not
architect.
you. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it?
benrosenblummusic.com.
Oh, okay. Okay. But that's nice though. Ben, you're really moving into a lot of other stuff. Bloommusic.com.
That's funny. That's me. And
Oh, you were in this article, this issue of Downbeat?
yes.
Cool. I have that in the other room.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Cool. And all your bunch of gigs here, and did you create your web, or you just
It's a Weebly website, but within that framework, I've been trying to make it as pretty as possible.
that's a whole other thing, right?
Yeah, I don't even know in this day and age how important a website is anymore, but I feel like at least when I send it out to venues, they can look and see that
Yeah.
you know, I have a up-to-date list of what I've been doing, and just kind of they see that I'm serious about touring regularly with my band. So,
I think, being a person who always um, uses people's information, if I find absolutely nothing on someone, it just kind of drives me crazy. It's like, why don't you just make a Wix site, one page, so that people can find you? Put your bio
yeah.
on there, a picture. What's the big deal? It's really not a lot to do. But this looks pretty cool. This looks very thorough, and there's your schedule and nice cool pictures.
Thanks.
All upcoming shows and albums. So each you can look at the albums, the videos. Da da da! Yay, videos. Media, photos, press. This picture of you is so cute, man. You must have been like 17 or
That was from the photo shoot I did for my first album in, yeah, 2017. It was probably 24 or something.
something. Yeah.
That was when I was really young.
I can see that. And look, he's still there. Ben is still with you there.
Yeah, that was when we went to Rudy Van Gelder's studio. It was very
Oh,
fun.
cool.
When he
Um,
was still alive, too. I mean, you know, lucky to have met him.
yeah. Okay, what do you think? One more video if we can?
Yeah, do you want to do one more from the album or
Whatever you'd like.
yeah, let's do one more from the album. Maybe I don't know if it's too long, but we can play Catamaran. That's the first track from the album. It's probably if you scroll up one of the first ones up there. Let's see. I don't see it actually. That's surprising.
You did a
Hmm.
Wayne Shorter song too?
Oh yeah, that's from a few years ago. Yeah, if you search in addition to all of that, Catamaran, you'll find it.
Is it with a C?
Catamaran. Yeah.
Wow, that's an interesting ending. Now,
Thanks.
I mean, I have to ask, what relationship did that ending have with the song? It wasn't the same song, was it?
Well, I wrote that little slip jig inspired by Irish folk music at the end, and I imagine the narrative of the song uh, as kind of a journey from I don't know, an imagined island to mainland, and then the ending is a little bit of a reflection on home, one last look back maybe,
Uh-huh.
but there's that moment in that Blood, Sweat, and Tears spinning wheel where at the very end of spinning wheel it goes into that little flute part. And I've always been a fan of these kind of really sudden and jarring changes because I feel like sometimes you just have to get the attention back on and be like, wait, what's happening? And for me, narratively, it makes a lot of sense, but probably for anyone listening, it'd be like, whoa, it catches completely off guard.
I was just wondering because, well, first of all, I was trying to, I hate to try and count music because it kind of brings me away from the overall feel. But I was wondering what that was in. Something,
Mostly a bar of 12 and a bar of 10, so 22, 8. That's how I have it written out.
it was wonderful. Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I really wasn't sure. I thought, well, maybe that was the piece that he like, and it was just really oh, differently arranged. You know what I mean?
It has that same kind of triplety feel, but no, it's meant to be completely different. Yeah.
Very cool. I love that. That was really a great arrangement.
Thank
Um,
you.
I'm going to sign off now because it's been almost 2 hours and it's been really enjoyable speaking with you.
Oh, you too. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to hearing what you're coming up with in the future, and I'm going to check out some of these names that you gave me. Really exciting. Thanks a lot. And I know people loved hearing you, and Roland bought your music, so that's
Oh,
good.
thank you so much, Roland. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening. It's really, if you let me, I'll talk about music all day. So, especially with somebody as accomplished and knowledgeable as yourself. So,
Well, thank you. All right. Well, I'll let you go, and I'm going to just tell people about what's coming up so you don't have to hang out. But thank you, Ben. It was really a pleasure. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
oh,
Thanks for your time.
it's my pleasure. Take care. I hope to talk again soon.
Okay, me too.
All
Bye.
right. Take care.
Ben Rosenblum, ladies and gentlemen. Exciting. Yeah. Wow. Pretty cool. So this week I'm having two more live people. I'm having Chris Bailey, drummer, who has played with a lot of pop artists, and he's very charming. He's English. He's coming on tomorrow. And then Thursday, Igor Kogan. So we're having a special Thursday because I usually do Monday through Wednesday live. And we're starting later. We're starting at 1 and we go till 3. So Igor is a bass player and a composer in LA, and he's done a lot of really great things. If you're in LA, there's some great music coming up. Um, Thursday night, there is a really one of the top guitarists in this city, jazz guitarist Tom Rizzo, with Kendall Kay on drums and Adam Cohen on bass and Scott Bredman on percussion. This is at Kulak's, 8 to 10. There's no cover this night, so why not come by, And on the 23rd, Sunday, Pierre, I really want you to come, is Creative Music Night led by a flutist named Ellen Burr, who's not your average flutist. She's really accomplished. And we are calling poets, dancers, actors, singers, instrumentalists to come together and create music together, improvise music together, led by Ellen. And so it's going to be really something special. We're going to start doing it once or twice a month at Kulak's on Sundays. And it's going to be great. So, yeah, so that's this week in LA. So I hope you guys are going to do great. Again, I thank Ben Rosenblum. What a lovely guy, huh? Wow. Very easy and clear to speak with about many things. And he's such a beautiful musician. Yeah. So I'll see you tomorrow, you guys. Oh, Joyce, you're going to go see Tuck and Patty. Cool. Pierre, thank you. I will see you there. I'm really excited. Hi, Nora. I saw you. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye. Have a good one.